have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock.
Hello, happy Monday. Thank you so much for listening to the Bold Moves podcast. I am Mandy Bryce and I am the host of the show. This is episode number 269 and today I am sharing with you my chat with L'areal Lipkins, who was thriving financially and very successfully in corporate sales, which led her to public speaking that she never expected and on several other paths, including a change in career that she didn't see coming. I think her story is really fantastic, and I think you will too, so stay tuned for my chat with L'areal. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Today, I am chatting with L'areal Lipkins. Welcome to the show, L'areal.
Thank you. Good to be with you, Mandy.
Oh my goodness, the pleasure is all mine. So first of all, I have to say, just looking at you right now and with your art and your shirt, I can tell this is going to be inspiring. The modeling pose for those who are listening instead of watching the video. But obviously you know that the show is called Bold Moves and you've listened to it before, and you wouldn't be sitting here chatting with me if you hadn't made some of your own. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your story and some of the risks that you've taken that have gotten you this far?
Okay. Well, I think my whole life has been a series of risks, right? I think a lot of people can probably attest to that as well. So and I guess I'll pick up in college and then kind of lead us up to where we are now. So in college, I studied marketing, having no idea what that was. But from my understanding, I felt like it was going to be a good blend of psychology and business, and I was interested in both. And after college, I went to work at a sales training company. By the way, I'm normally an introvert. So working at a sales training company where people are on stage in front of thousands of people was really not me, like me, so to speak.
Sure.
And so, but I was more behind the scenes, or so I thought. So, yeah, the plot thickens. I worked that job as director of marketing for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And about 3 years in, I was talking to the CEO and I said, so what is your plan for the company? What are your goals? What are your ambitions? Right? Typical 21, 22-year-old questions to be asking. And he said, well, one day you're going to buy this company from me. Yes. So
that's not the typical response to a 21, yes, 22-year-old question.
I had the same kind of shocked face because one, I was still behind the scenes. I wasn't interested in selling. I was interested in the lead gen and making stuff look pretty. Sure. And so probably 6 months later, I did my first speaking engagement that I was kind of trapped into. Mm-hmm. My CEO and I at the time were meeting with someone that wanted to bring him in to speak. And he was like, yes, I should be available. But even if I'm not, L'areal will be available. Mind you, I hadn't spoken in front of a group at all at this point. And so at the end of the meeting, we shake hands and the guy walks out and I look at his calendar and I said, you're booked that day. And he said, I know.
Oh, you got thrown in.
So my first speaking engagement, believe it or not, was in front of 80 men at an audiovisual conference.
Oh my
talking about sales. And I think the first big risk was going through with it because he being my CEO at the time, gave me several options and opportunities to back out. And honestly, I wanted to. But my belief has always been if being scared is the only reason I'm not doing something, that's not a good enough excuse.
I love that.
And so I did it. And from that, I went from moving to marketing, to sales, to managing partner. And I was there for almost 10 years. And the CEO and I at this point are talking discussions about me finally buying the business. And I don't know if anybody else has been in this situation where you just feel internally it's time for a shift.
Absolutely.
And it's time to do something different. But Mandy, at this time, I'm making well over 6 figures. I am doing well. I have the house, the car, the kid, the husband, like everything is great.
Yeah.
And then I resigned.
Okay.
I resigned, and in full disclosure, it took me 18 months to really build up the courage to surrender to my passion, in air quotes, right? To really surrender to it. But I was terrified. I was at that moment going, am I as good as I think I am? And am I crazy? I'm at like the peak of my career. We were a franchise, so we had a corporate office, and my corporate office at the time was hiring me to work with their clients, and I'm training Fortune 500 companies.
Wow.
And then I'm like, yeah,
bye.
I'm going to be leaving in 2 weeks, right?
Oh my goodness.
And I was terrified, but it has been the best decision I have ever made. And if that wasn't enough, at the same time that I quit my job, my husband and I, we picked up and moved 250 miles away.
Okay.
So we moved, yes. So we were moving from Dallas to Houston and a brand new city at the same time where I'm relaunching this full-time business with a 2-year-old in tow. And yeah, but I think life is a series of risks. I think life is a series of bold moves. And then one of the things that I've really realized is that once you make that bold move for those 7 seconds of courage, you realize it was never as bad as you thought it was.
Absolutely. All right. So you quit your job to do something else, which you said was following your passion. Tell us what that is. What are you doing now?
So I coach women on how to elevate their mindset so they can actually execute their goals. Okay. And when I was doing sales training and consulting, obviously I taught people how to sell, but a lot of what I talked about was the mindset piece, because I could train them from sun up to sundown, but if they didn't know how to get out of their own way, if they didn't know how to set goals that were bigger than their fear, they weren't going to do it. Yeah. And so that has kind of been the common thread of things that I've done over the last 10 years. And so now I've gone from working with predominantly men when I was in corporate, like 95% of my clients are men, to now working 100% with women, except for my corporate clients is diverse. But on an individual basis, working with women and really helping them get clear about what it is that they want. What is it that's calling them? What is it that's pulling them that they're talking themselves out of? Sure. And then really giving them the confidence and the tools to go from I have this idea to I'm actually taking action to make it happen.
Okay. So if someone wanted to work with you, what does that process look like? I imagine there are different options and such, but walk us through a little bit of that.
Yeah, so there's really 3 different options. One would be someone who just needs to do a clarity call. They have a ton of things swirling around in their head, but they have no idea where to begin or how to make sense of it, because we've never been there before. I have. It's like, I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to do that.
Right.
Where do I begin?
Objects.
Yeah, right? So doing a simple clarity call is one option. The second level would be I have online courses that are self-paced, that are really designed to say, okay, I have this idea. How do I make it clear? How do I break it down to actionable steps? How do I create a plan? And then how do I actually give myself permission to grow into the person that I need to be to make it happen? And then the third level is someone who says, L'Areal, that's great, but I need some one-on-one attention. Yeah. And it's really spending 4 weeks together going through those same processes, but you have someone that you're going to be checking in with and someone that can help course correct you.
Accountability and
accountability, yes.
Yeah, that can be huge.
Yeah, and then you know what, Mandy, teaching people how to hold themselves accountable. Right? Because, one of the things I always tell them is I want to get you to the point where you don't need me. Right? Because I'm not going to be with you every day. I want you to be able to check yourself and say, no, I'm self-sabotaging. Right now, I'm wimping out. Right now, and then hold themselves accountable to their goals.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it makes complete sense because I guess I kind of think of like almost the pharmaceutical industry where they want you to rely on whatever pill they prescribe for the rest of your life, but that's not actually best for the person. So it's wonderful that you're not like, yeah, I'll be your accountability partner forever if you keep paying me. But rather like, you got this. I'm teaching you that you should know that you've got this, and I'm going to help you leave me so that you can do it on your own.
You know what? And I think it's the difference between, just giving people information and then really wanting to help people transform.
Yeah.
I think that's really the difference. Is I want someone to say, this is how I was before. This is how I was thinking. This is the state of my life, to now I've really got the confidence to step into who I am. And I think we all have that inside. Yeah. It's just giving ourselves that permission to say, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to commit to it. And we talk ourselves out of it. Yet we cheer everybody else on, right? With their bold moves and
at least hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Not everyone does, but
yeah. Hopefully, we're cheering other people on, saying, you could do it, Mandy, you can do it. And then when it comes to us, we're like, well, I don't have this and I don't have that. And what about this? And we spend more energy talking ourselves out of things.
Yeah.
Then if we took half that energy and actually did it, we could get so much more done.
Right. You're so right. I've loved it I guess in the productivity standpoint, it applies too. But if you think about like, all right, well, what advice would you give your little sister or your best friend? And like, would you ever talk to your little sister or best friend the way that you talk to yourself? And I think most people would say a resounding no.
Absolutely.
There are days that I would probably beat someone up if they spoke to their little sister. But sometimes I hear myself saying to me. So
when I was doing sales training, there was this statistic that I found that said we think on average 50 to 75,000 thoughts every single day. And everything we do is driven by a belief or a thought, right?
Sure.
And they said on average, 85% are negatively predispositioned. Now, obviously, there's some people that are more optimistic and people who are more pessimistic, sure. But 80 to 85% of some of the stuff that we have going through our head is working against us.
You would think at least more would be neutral.
You would hope.
There's a
you
cup.
would hope.
Wow. I almost said there's a dog, but I feel like for at least me, that would be a very positive. Like, there's a dog. I guess depends on the dog and his mood, but that's really interesting. And I wonder, obviously you can't track 57,000-ish thoughts per day, because that's all you would be able to do. But I wonder how they figured that out and what an exercise would be to check ourselves in that, because I would never have guessed myself at 85% negative. And I know that I definitely have negative thoughts. So maybe that's correct, but that's a wild statistic to consider.
And I think for people who are very aware, so I'm obviously into personal development. So I catch myself a lot, but even in teaching people, I catch myself a lot,
Yeah.
And so one exercise that I'll have people do is just get a journal and do a check-in. So do a check-in first thing in the morning. What am I thinking? How am I feeling? And then a check-in at lunch or noon, and then a check-in at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how, I think a lot of us, we're not really thinking. We're not consciously thinking. We tend to be reacting to things.
Yeah.
And so that just puts some pause to say, okay, what am I actually thinking? What am I actually feeling? And you would be surprised. So I would encourage anybody that's listening is do that for a week.
Yeah.
Then take a look at it.
Yeah.
And then what another good thing about it is now you become aware, and then you can coach yourself out of it.
Absolutely. I think part of what's fascinating about that is I've had times where I've been really upset about something. I don't know, maybe something weird happened at the grocery store and someone was really rude to me or whatever. And half the time that I get so fired up that I'm mad for over an hour. Mm-hmm. If you ask me next week, remember you were really mad last Tuesday, why? I'll be and it's well, how important is it if I can't even remember it a week later? So sometimes just when you're angry, being okay, is this going to matter in a year? Or, and then if it's not, then just okay, time to move on.
And even asking myself, why am I angry? Why am I upset right now?
Yeah.
And you would be surprised. Like, so I've been married for almost 5 years, but we've been together 10, and I had to start doing that. Little marriage advice. I found myself getting upset, and I'm like, L'Areal, why are you upset right now?
Yeah.
And I usually realize it has nothing to do with him.
Yep.
It has something to do with me. Right?
Yeah.
And so even just becoming more self-aware is so incredibly important.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've definitely had to come back with my tail and my legs and be like, I just realized I sort of picked a fight with you, and it's because I'm upset about this other thing that has nothing to do with you, and I'm really sorry.
Say I have been there as well.
At least
you know
we're in
what?
this together.
But now, like I told my husband what I started doing. So now when I get upset, he's like, so why are you really upset? I'm like,
and you're like, no, you can't do that because that's just going to make me more mad right now.
I have to do this for myself.
I am not in the proper position to hear that.
Yes, I'm not in a coaching moment right now.
My husband actually asks me sometimes, he's like, are you coachable right now? And I'm like, no. Usually it's in the weight room, but it can apply anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm curious, what prompted the move to Houston?
We were ready for something different.
Okay.
I think so I'm born and raised in Dallas. And when we got engaged, my husband moved to Dallas from Houston because I'm climbing this corporate ladder.
Right.
And so once we had discussions that I was going to be leaving, he's kind of looking at me like, so, and so that's how we ended up back in Houston. And what was so funny is when he started telling people that we were going to move to Houston, they asked him if like we were getting a divorce or if I was moving too, because I was so set on being in Dallas.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things that sometimes when you're doing this big shift, like it helped me shifting physical locations. Now I'm not recommending that to everybody else.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is it was a big shift for me quitting my job. And I think I needed to be in a totally different space that was unfamiliar.
Sure.
To where now it's kind of all or nothing. And so we moved here in October, and my last day at my job was November 23rd, which happened to be Black Friday. I'm like, yeah, that's going to be my last day. And in January, I started writing my first book.
Okay.
And so it gave me like a totally clear-headed space to really just focus on the next chapter of my life, really.
Literally, because it's a book.
Literally. Yeah,
So
no pun intended.
I'm so into dad jokes, so I apologize if I'm dragging you down with me, but
That's okay.
Was that this past January then, or how recently did this all go down?
Yeah, this was this past January.
Okay. And so you said your first book, has this first book been completed, or is it still in progress? Yes?
Oh, no, I wrote it in 21 days.
Oh my goodness.
So I started a little bit after the first, I think it's like January 4th or 5th.
Okay.
And I had it done, and it is published, and it went live April 2nd.
Oh,
So,
congratulations.
Thank you.
And what's it called?
So it's called A Woman with Vision, and it's all about how to fulfill the goals and dreams that you have. And like I said, really taking it from that idea to implementing it. So I focus on, I talk about this concept called the goal setting trap. And I talk about 4 different areas that you could focus on to get out of the goal setting trap.
Ooh,
And what was really interesting, here's another statistic. Here's the marketing side, marketing research coming out of me. Another statistic that 92% of people who set goals never accomplish them.
That's depressing.
Yes, it's depressing, it's scary, it's frightening. And what's really interesting about it is a lot of times those goals are beyond ourselves. So then I think about how many other lives are impacted because we didn't actually go for what we wanted to.
Share your gifts with the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. So you called it your first book, and that would imply that there are more on the way. Did you write another one in like 10 minutes that's already out? And
Yeah, it went live this morning, actually. But as I was writing, I did have a second book that I put on my list to do. But I'm not doing that this year. Really, I'm going to be focusing on this book and really getting the message out into the world. And then we'll come with that one January next year.
Okay. January's book writing month.
Yeah.
Perfect. So since we're on the topic of books, we'll definitely put a link so that yours is available from the show notes.
Okay.
Is it on Amazon, on your website? Where can we find it?
D, all the above. So it's available on Amazon in both paperback and Kindle, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble. So you can get it where books are sold.
Okay, fantastic. And then are there any other books? You mentioned that you're into personal development, and I also am with you there. If anybody's listening that is like, all right, I like what this lady's saying, I'm definitely going to read her book, but when I'm done, I want to read more things that she recommends. What else do you recommend? And it doesn't have to be personal development. If you have a good beach read or recovering from surgery or just lazy entertainment read, that works too.
You know what? I have like this running list of books I'm about to read.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm reading How to Be a Great Boss. And that's all about how do you cast this vision, because I do a lot of corporate work as well, around goal setting and vision. Another favorite book is Carol Dweck. It's called Mindset, and she talks about growth mindset and like limited mindset.
Mm-hmm.
What's another good one? I'm about to start doing Atomic Habits. I've seen that quite a bit, so I'm going to jump into that. The Power of Focus is one that I recently wrapped up. Okay. And so what was really interesting is I'm big into vision boards. I teach people how to do vision boards as well.
Yeah, and vision boards and brunch or something, right? Which sounds like an epic combination. I don't use the word epic often, so it was really reserved for a series.
Yeah, so I do an event called Vision Boards Over Brunch, and that was really my segue in moving out of corporate into full-time entrepreneurship. So I started that in 2015, and then left my corporate job in 2018. But where was I headed, Mandy?
I was asking you about books, and you started saying that you make vision boards and teach people to make vision boards.
Yes. So
I got distracted by brunch. Started thinking about mimosas and
mimosas. And we have them do it before they start cutting out pictures, right? Or cut out your pictures and then start drinking mimosas.
Take the scissors away when the alcohol comes out.
Absolutely. But one of the things is I've never been a big reader, honestly. Like I would read 4 or 5 books a year, perhaps.
Okay.
But for some reason, before I even decided I was going to be leaving my job, I put on my vision board that I was going to read 12 books in 2018, which for me, again, was a stretch.
Yeah, it's 0 to 60, right?
Yeah, so I ended up reading, I think, 16 or 17 books.
Love that.
Which was crazy, but also as I started looking at the last couple books I read, and I was taking notes about writing a book and hadn't even decided about writing a book. So it was just kind of funny how sometimes if we just start taking little steps, things become clear. And so once I was like, hey, I'm going to write this book, I went back to those books that I started making notes in. Yeah. And all of those things, nothing happens by incident, right? Nothing is a coincidence. And all of those books actually helped set the foundation to give me the confidence I needed to say, okay, I'm going to totally change my life. Yeah. And not only leaving my corporate job and buying this company, which I had been working towards for 10 years. Yeah. But then also pick up 250 miles and move. Yeah. Because again, that is not like me. I like my little box and I like to stay in it. That's fair. And reading those books really gave me the permission I need to say, you know what, I want a different box, or I don't want a box at all. I want a bigger box.
I love that. So I'm glad you brought the move back up, because you mentioned a couple times about your corporate clients. And I was wondering if any of your experience with the corporate setting that you were in has been able to carry over into what you're doing. Like if you still do a little bit of consulting work with your former employer that you almost bought, or if that was like a clean break, especially because moving to a new city, I don't know what percentage of your work is online versus with local people in Houston. I imagine the brunch thing, obviously, a virtual brunch isn't probably as fun as, although next time I'd love to Zoom. I'll buy my own champagne here.
So, doing the corporate work really helped me understand how corporate works.
Sure.
And so, and a lot of times when I was doing the corporate sales training and consulting, I would talk to a sales leader, VP of sales, CEO, and they were frustrated because here they are trying to get their people to change. And they're like, they're just not motivated. And I go, so what are their goals? And they had no idea as a leader what that person's goals were.
Sure.
And so that's what I do now. So instead of focusing on sales and sales training consulting, when I go into a corporate organization, they're hiring me to come in and work with their team on setting goals, and personal and professional, or they're hiring me to come in and work with their leadership.
Right.
Because a lot of times the CEO or president or leadership team has a goal and objective, but their team and their employees have no idea what that is.
Right.
And so how do they really craft a vision? And then the third level,
to buy into it.
Buy in, yes. And I can't buy into something if I don't know what that something is.
Right.
Or how I contribute to it. And then the third level is companies hire me to do that same thing, vision casting. But then I come in on a quarterly basis and help them set goals for the next quarter and then close out the previous quarter.
Okay, fantastic. I love that. So I'm curious, you mentioned that you were following your passion when you quit your corporate job that you were excelling at to do this instead. I wonder where that ties into purpose. Do you know what your purpose is? And if so, do you mind sharing it? I know it's different and it can be dynamic for everyone, but whatever your interpretation of that question is, I would love to hear.
I think what I've realized is that my purpose and passion have always been the same. The only thing that's changed is the setting.
Sure.
Right? So my purpose is to really help people get from where they are to where they want to be. I am like the master cheerleader, but I'm also the person that's going to say, okay, Mandy, kick it into gear, cut the BS, and let's get on track, right? Both. So I think it was really for me, I said finding my passion or following my passion. What I really think is I was scared of the audience shift.
Sure.
Right? So I knew how to work corporate. I knew how to keep men in line. I knew how to do that. But then when it was like, okay, now you're going to be working with women, that was the big adjustment for me because the purpose has always been the same.
Yeah.
And so that was the big shift. And I think one of the things about purpose, because people say, well, how do you find it? And how do you know?
Yeah.
And I tell people, you don't find your purpose finds you.
Right.
And oftentimes we discount it because it's like, it comes easy to us. It's just what we do that we don't see it as special. But when I really looked at it, because honestly, when I was getting ready to leave my job, I was like, well, I could talk sales and I could talk speaking and I could talk about all these things that I could talk about. But then when I went to people and I said, if you were going to come and ask me a question about something, what would that question be? It was not about speaking. It was not about marketing. It was not about sales. It was like, no, you're the person I'm going to come to when I need to get in gear, when I need to get a reset. And I was like, okay, I surrender. That's just what I'm going to focus on and stay in my lane.
I feel like there's so much to unpack from the last couple sentences that you've said. And one of them is, like you mentioned, the different directions you could have gone. And I think that brings it to just because you can doesn't mean you should. Because there are a lot of things that I can do, but I will hate myself at the end of the day if I spent all day doing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was the thing is, what I realized, Mandy, is to me, I was looking for like this shiny, real fancy, concrete deal. And it's like, no,
right.
That's not really where I have you, right? This is where you should be focused on. This is some value that you could bring. So you're absolutely right. And especially with social media.
Yeah.
Especially on the entrepreneurial side, it's very easy to look at what everybody else is doing. And it's like, hey, well, maybe I should do this, or maybe I should do that, or maybe I should do this. And it's like, if you're self-aware, you will know exactly what you need to do versus everything that you can do or could do.
Right. And I guess it's another thing with you can do anything, but not everything. So you really have to pick what lights you up to stick with that and be happy at the end of the day.
And one thing that I heard that really helped me get clear is someone said, well, what do you want to be known for?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want your legacy to be? And that really was like, do I really want to be known for XYZ?
Yeah.
No. You know, and it just gave me a sense of clarity to say, okay, let me put my stake in the ground.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm curious because you said that you were a little bit uncomfortable with your shift in the audience that you're working on, but you are the one who chose it.
So how does that work out, right?
Yes, exactly. That's what I want to know. Like, I mean, of course the show is about intentionally stepping outside of your comfort zone, but I imagine you were just sitting there going, how can I make this whole entire big abrupt change in my life be more drastic and uncomfortable? So please share with me how you arrived at change in audience that was a bold move in itself.
So I'm a woman of faith. And so when I say I surrendered, if it were up to me, quite honestly, I think I would have stayed in my corporate job.
Okay.
But, you know, because I'm a woman of faith, I was at this point where I could hear God very clearly saying, okay, it's time for something different.
Sure.
And I was like, nope, I'm good. I have another.
I like the box.
The ladder, thanks. I'm good. I'll check in with you like next year, right? And so that's literally where I was at. And once I began to, I think sometimes when it's time for that shift,
right,
where you are now becomes uncomfortable. Like
right,
it felt like for me, like the walls were closing in. The
sure,
passion and all of that I had before just wasn't it. My mindset wasn't right. I didn't feel like I was showing up as my best self. And I was like, okay, God, I'm just going to surrender. And so when I say my audience, I didn't go, well, I want to work with women necessarily. It was like, okay, so if you're going to change up my whole life, where do you have me? Right. And it was like, you're going to work with women. And honestly, I fought it. I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. Right. Even though I had vision boards over brunch, which really works with women, I never thought about that on a mass scale.
Sure.
And what I realized is there were some things that I had to work on in myself that I was really scared about, talk about being self-aware. And I had just got familiar working with men. Sure. So that was in my comfort zone.
Absolutely.
And so that's how I ended up with that. It really was something more divine where I didn't go like, hey, let me work with women. I was like, yeah, okay, maybe.
Yeah.
And I just realized that all my corporate experience, because my audience was predominantly men, there was information I was teaching them that when I did have a couple women clients, they just weren't aware of. Okay. Like the rules of the game and things behind the scenes. And so I think all of that really helped me say, let me take all of that and teach that to women that wouldn't walk through my class or wouldn't be walking through that Fortune 500 program that I'm teaching.
Sure.
And so it really allowed me to take that and share it with a whole new audience that I didn't spend a lot of time in front of.
I love that. I feel like going back to purpose and how people kind of put so much pressure and think that they're going out to find it. I think one thing that's important to note is how dynamic it can be and how general it can be. So you said you're still living your purpose and always have been, just in a different setting. And I feel like if you set it as broad as helping people get from A to B or have a transformation, you could be doing that working in a hair salon. You could be doing that in so many different roles, and it's not some specific, like, I help people get from A to B by doing XYZ. So I think that that's something that could be really helpful to people to realize if they're putting some pressure, like they feel like they're a pirate looking for a treasure chest that it's going to just open and, oh, there's the purpose.
I am your purpose. Yeah.
Nice to meet you. Yes.
You know, and that was one of the things I had to get clear on, is that my purpose and, let's say, my product or service aren't necessarily the same thing. Right? Yeah. And so that was really clear for me. If I help people get from where I am to where I want to be, or where they want to be, I can do that through speaking, through coaching, through consulting, through my books, through courses, versus, I think sometimes, to your point, we pigeonhole ourselves and we think it's just this one thing at this one time in this one setting, when your purpose is so much bigger than that.
Absolutely. I love that. I think that's great advice. So I'm curious in all of this, especially as a fellow introvert who has made some big, far moves across the country and then across another large state. I'm in California. What's the scariest thing you've ever been through, or scariest moment you've had to push past fear?
And in life for the last 6 months.
Whichever you feel like sharing, or both. I trust your judgment on answering what you feel.
You know,
right.
I honestly, I know I keep coming back to this, but honestly, my scariest thing, and I think that will be a defining moment, was pressing send on my resignation letter.
Yeah.
And it was because I find myself as one of those people, as an introvert, I tend to be very loyal. I will take a lot of BS sometimes, and I will try to see, the bright side of things and really stick it out. And I think there's benefits to that. I think I was also at a point where I just felt like I was being taken advantage of just a little bit. And it took a lot of courage, and which I didn't realize at the time, to do it. When I looked at my resignation letter, I wrote it July 13th. I didn't actually submit it to November 23rd.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And so that for me was knowing I was walking away from something.
Yeah.
And at the time I felt like, because I had been successful, it makes you wonder, like, can I recreate that?
Sure.
And so that for me was a time where I got to say, you weren't just successful by coincidence here.
Yeah, you didn't fall into the success trap.
Things didn't just fall into your lap. You actually worked for it. And, I don't think I was giving myself enough credit, honestly. Yeah. And so that for me was like, okay, all or nothing. And here we are. So I think that's been one of the biggest things. That would probably be the biggest thing right now, especially in the last year, from someone who's worked at pretty much one career. Yeah. And thinking I was buying the business and thought that I was going to have this huge sales training organization and making all these plans to say, yeah, I'm good. It's been a fun ride. It was terrifying.
Yeah, I believe it. So I'm excited to hear your answer to this follow-up question, because it seems like it's something that you probably coach people through every single day. But I would like to know what your advice is for how to push past that fear. If you have that written resignation letter sitting there for months, or whatever it is that you're waiting to click go on.
You know what that taught me is, one, timing is key, but also the longer you wait to make a decision, the harder the decision becomes.
For sure.
So sometimes you just have to rip off the Band-Aid and do it. Right. Yeah. So that would be what I would say to people. People always ask me, like, what are the tips to execute? Do it. Just do it, right? Right. And it sounds very easy. But when I'm at that edge, I'm like, okay, should I not? We're like, what if I fail? What if it doesn't work? What if I'm homeless? What if, like, that's what I thought about, right? Yeah. What are other people going to think? And I think if you stop thinking and just start doing, then we would get so much more done. Right. And so that's what I would say. Whatever you've been putting off, just do it. And you don't have to go A to Z, right? But if you can just take one small step, then things start going a whole lot easier. And it gets me to something that I think would also be helpful for your listeners, is the difference between motivation and momentum. Ooh, yeah. Because sometimes we're waiting to, like, well, I don't feel ready. Mandy, I really want to do it, but I'm just not feeling it, right? Or I don't really feel motivated. And I say sometimes it's not about how you feel. Right. And motivation is a feeling, and your feelings are not facts. Right. Versus momentum is where now you have leverage. And so what I've discovered is that you just need enough motivation to start, and then you want to focus on building momentum. Doesn't matter if I don't always feel like doing what I have to do, but when I do it, and then it helps me knock out 3 other things, then it helps me build momentum.
Absolutely.
And I think because a lot of us are waiting to feel motivated, we start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, and it is always harder to start over.
Oh, absolutely.
Versus just building momentum by being consistent and taking consistent action.
Absolutely. And I think to that point, like I've definitely seen myself in that cycle, and I've seen myself after a lot of consistent momentum, as you mentioned. And I think even just like, and it doesn't have to be toward a big goal. It can be you have Saturday and you are hoping to clean the house. Well, start by organizing your mail. And then you'll feel like, yeah, I organized my mail, and that accomplishment will be enough to be like, now it's time to tackle laundry or whatever it is.
Absolutely. Right. And what you're saying is really creating habits and a routine. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredibly important. Even people would say, well, how did you write a book in 21 days? I found time to write. Well, how did you find time to write?
Made time
I
to
made
write.
time to write. Right? And so again, I think we make things just way too complicated. And it's, when I start writing that book, I struggle like for 30 minutes writing an Instagram caption. So to think that I was going to be writing a book, okay, seriously, I was like, really? But I wrote every single day. Yeah. I didn't write for hours a day. I wrote, I think, probably 90 minutes a day. Yeah. And if you write 90 minutes a day and you do it consistently, you too can write a book in less than 30 days.
I love that. All right. So you mentioned Instagram, and I know we can find your book in the show notes, and I'm going to add all these links to the show notes as well. Where can we find you online?
So online, you can follow me on Instagram at Vision Boards with an S, Vision Boards over brunch, or on my website, awomanwithvision.com.
Okay, perfect. And that's how, if people want to work with you, they can get in touch with you as well.
Yep. If you go to my website, you'll have those 3 different options, or you can reach out to me to talk about which one is best for where you are right now.
Okay, awesome. You've given so much advice just naturally that has been fantastic just in our conversation. I want to make sure if there's anything on your heart that you want to get out that you haven't had the chance to offer to our listeners or viewers, that you have the chance to share any other lessons or tips or anything else of value that you would like to share.
Yeah. So I would say to anyone who's kind of sitting at that edge, or anyone who has all of these goals and you're like, what in the world do I do with them? I always tell people focus on 4 different areas.
Okay.
And so I'll give those 4 to your listeners now. So the first one is clarity. Like you can get crystal clear about what it is that you want, but not just what it is that you want, but why you want it. It makes things so much easier. So even when I was sitting on the edge of should I leave my job or should I stay, once I got clear about what it was that I actually wanted, and when I thought about what is it that I want to be known for and what is it that I want to be remembered for, that gave me the courage I needed to go for it. The second thing I think is once people get clear about things, the second challenge that people run into is the planning. Sure. They either over plan, they create a plan and then they go back and change it and they revise it and they tweak it, and like 6 months later they've done nothing. Right? So you definitely don't want to do that. And you also don't want to underplan where you just start taking action, because the moment that you hit a roadblock, most people stop. Right?
Or
so
you're
I say
flying in the wrong direction.
This is not where I wanted to be. Right? And so I say if you can get your plan like 70% of the way mapped out, then start and then course correct. The third area is going to be on the execution, which again, I think sometimes we just overcomplicate it. We're looking for like 3 steps to execute, or like how to execute your goals in 30 days.
Sure.
It's really not that complicated. It's really about taking the action. And if you find yourself getting stuck in the execution phase, what you want to look at is number 4, which is mindset. Okay. And so one of the things that I tell people is oftentimes our challenge is I set this goal, right? I want to accomplish A, whatever that A might be for you. Okay. That goal is probably bigger than where I am right now. Hopefully it's bigger than where I'm at right now. The problem is that a lot of times our goals are bigger than our belief system. Okay. And anytime they should be, right? Yeah. And so what happens is here I am trying to accomplish this big goal or a new goal with the same mindset, and it doesn't work that way. Yeah. And so you literally have to get clear about where you want to be and then figure out what is your mindset needs to be in order to get there. So 4 areas I would focus on. It tells you more about it in the book and exactly how to do that, but clarity, planning, execution, and mindset. And if you can pinpoint where you're struggling, then it becomes much easier to fix.
I love that.
And that's around goal setting, or even I have a big decision to make or a bold move to make, right? All of those 4 come in hand.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
All right. So my final question is, if little 8-year-old L'Areal, well, I always say that with the disclaimer because depending on your answer, we might go off on a different tangent. But if 8-year-old L'Areal had a crystal ball and could see into the future to see where you are now and all of the journey along the way, as well as, you know, the foreseeable future, you might have plans coming up that you know of. On a scale of 1 to 11, how excited would little you be to be where you are and where you're headed right now?
Oh, 11.
Yay!
Definitely. I mean, I even think about where I was 6 months ago.
Yeah.
or 6 months ago. Or where we're at it 60 days ago. And I get excited.
I love that.
I'm excited. You know what I mean? I really think I'm excited because I realize that, and this is going to sound very cliche, that I can create the life that I want.
Yeah.
And I think for a moment, I forgot that.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I think we feel like life happens like to us or something like that when we don't really realize, no, if I don't like where I'm at right now, I can make a change. I can make one decision. I can make one choice. I can do one thing. And then, you know, other changes to get where I want.
Yeah.
And so I really was reminded of that over the last 6 months and the last year that, yeah, if I want to know what the future is, then you create it. You make a decision that's going to get you there.
Yeah. I feel like you've brought up a couple times different sayings or phrases that are a little cliche, but I always feel like the reason why things are cliche is because people say them all the time. And the reason why people say them all the time is because they're true. So at the risk of sounding cliche, it's because it's actually like legit wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, yeah, it sounds, you can create the future, or you want to know the future, you create it. Yeah, it sounds totally cliche, but that has been my life.
Yeah, I love that.
And I think once we understand the power that we have, then it's, for some people it's scary, right? Because they don't want the power. They rather say, no, I want life to happen to me. I don't want to have to take responsibility.
Yeah. Right. It's his fault. It's because of
it's his. But for those of us who have big dreams and goals, and I'm sure that's everyone that's listening, once you understand that you have that power, then there's nothing that you cannot do, like literally. And I think I've just had that revived in me. And so I'm super excited about the next 6 months or the next year. And I just know it's going to be amazing.
I love it. Well, I'm excited to see where you head, and I really appreciate everything that you've shared. I feel like some of it has been like, all right, Mandy, this isn't what this was for, but L'Areal is here to kick you in the butt and get you out of that over planning, over preparing that I've been in for longer than I'll share. Because I've started a book too, and it definitely wasn't 21 days ago. So
now you just need your deadline.
That's right.
Get your deadline, and then figure out why you want to write your book. Yeah. Because even when people say, well, I want to write a book just to share my story. Yeah. For most people, that's not strong enough.
Right.
But once we hone in on why they really want to write it and put a deadline, you can do it. So I'm not going to ask you what your deadline is on air, or will I?
It's the funny thing is it's done. I'm just going through and like adding little things. So yeah.
Oh, stop. Listen,
I know.
Because you will always make it better. And even after I published mine and I read it, I'm like, oh, I can add this and that. And someone said, you know, you can write more than one book, right? And I was like,
right.
Okay.
Or be like a textbook company in college and just add a second edition.
Exactly. So get it out there.
Yes, I need to. Feel free to yell at me soon if you don't hear more. Well, thank you so much for everything today. It's been an absolute pleasure to begin my week with this chat with you. And I'm really excited to share your story and your wisdom with all of my listeners and viewers.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. I know I felt like I could take on the world after my chat with L'Areal, so I can only imagine what she does for her clients. If you're interested in finding her or the book recommendations we made or following her through her journey of more books and new amazing things, head over to www.boldmovespodcast.com where all of the show notes are for both this episode and the 268 episodes that preceded it. Now, if you don't want to miss number 270 and beyond, I strongly would love it and suggest that you subscribe. That way you will get either an automatic download, maybe even in your sleep, or a notification whenever a new one comes out on Mondays and Fridays. So stay tuned for both of those things. Mondays and Fridays, new interviews and new episodes and challenges. I would also love it if you would share this episode with anyone who you think could use hearing this message and would find it valuable. The more people I can reach, the closer I will be to getting to my goal of inspiring as many people as possible to make baby steps and big, bold moves toward their goals and living their dream lives, and I can't do that without you. Another way that you can help me with that is to leave a review on iTunes. Now, of course, I would love a 5-star review because that would have Apple help with sharing the podcast. It'll suggest it to people as something good they can check out and listen to. However, if you have constructive criticism and you don't feel like sending me a message and telling me personally, I of course will take the opportunity to learn and improve from a review on iTunes. So if you have any constructive criticism, you can leave it for me there as well. All right, thank you so much for listening. I hope that you're here for Friday's challenge as well. And as always, be bold and have a sparkly day. Bye-bye.